All right, everybody, it's our Klaus here, and very excited to present this really the way I should have gone about it in the first place. And for those of you who took the time to watch my very humbling attempt at a live stream, I do greatly appreciate that. And again, apologies, it was a bit of a bomb on my end. Trying to present a whole new block of information and toggling between a comment thread is just not a congruent notion. So I'll bear that in mind going forward, and we'll give the live stream a better go in more of a discussion form. But the information that I was presenting in it is supremely fascinating and something I wanted to share in a much more coherent and overall powerful manner. And again, unless it got siphoned off from that and has been presented elsewhere since, is going to be completely new insight. So, with that, we're talking about the government shutdown. And it's really a complex issue because, yeah, I totally believe that it is a 100% planned event. This whole back and forth going on here is a scripted spectacle that we're just watching unfold again, feeding that energy into it, keeping everybody in a state of instability and fear and overall contempt in a lot of ways. This is fostering some very extreme views on both sides of the table, and that is absolutely by design. And with all of that being said and expanding, there are very real consequences in the sense of the 800,000 workers said to be displaced by this. And again, the branches that they work for now operating at incredibly compromised levels, if at all, are all very real things worth tuning into, even though it's a part of this plan, right? This is the slow burn that has been initiated at this point as they introduce the idea of bringing a section of society to its knees and really in that act of making people unable to provide for themselves, for their family, to have to choose between things such as food or medication or shelter. The further that goes on, the longer that goes on, the more leverage the elite have in putting that bar wherever they want when they go to offer a hand to relieve them of that uncertainty. And this is a trial run of that right now. And something I feel is really worth noting here is that today is January 20th, which is the 30th day of the government shutdown and the third year anniversary of the Trump inauguration. So you have that nice 33 on this particular day, which also happens to be the day of a super blood wolf moon. And of course, all of this revolving around the elite's reverence for the moon. But again, so when I present this information today and go into this coding, I'm not trying to detract from the very real struggle that is emerging from this event, planned as it may be. But again, I feel this is all very important to understand. And so with that, let's delve in here. And the thing I want to highlight is that this shutdown is centered around this notion of border security. Not only that, but it is rooted in the year 2018 on December 22nd. And of course, if you look to the left side of your screen there, you can see the coding for that and how it connects directly to Donald John Trump Sr. But what I want to do is emphasize that we had this cover release from The Economist last year as a tentative prototype for their world in 2019, in which we had this blankness, this nothing. Of course, the Da Vinci one was later rolled out, but I did a video connecting this to moon worship and a number of other occult concepts, and also connected it, of course, to this 1988 cover, in which we have the Phoenix with the 2018 medallion. But why I highlight these two is because I feel that this could also have been indicating the government shutdown. And do remember that on November 30th, the day advertised for the pre-order of this, George Bush Sr., Mr. New World Order, was announced dead. And again, this cover from 88, the year that he was elected president. But again, the government shutdown absolutely having this cataclysmic component to it of completely crippling the American economy and helping to usher in this world currency. And of course, with its roots in 2018, seeing that on the medallion doesn't put this cover out of the picture yet, for everybody who wants to be dismissive. But so that's all absolutely worth mentioning. But now, take a look here, and there's going to be a bit of coding here before we get to our next piece. But again, this coding is incredibly important. So take a look at the phrase border security. And in that Jewish value there, you can clearly see how we get our reduction to 88. And again, for those of you who have still not seen that, any of the number of videos connecting that number to Trump, false flags, the pangolin, Whitman, as we'll get into today, the Athenaeum, the painting of George Washington. But you'll see here references to man of war, as well as it's a great catalyst. So again, this idea of border security is meant to catalyze these extreme levels of tension within the country, within communities, to push more people to get government assistance when there's not enough of that resource to go around as is. And keeping in mind that when they're applying for that, right, they're not getting it anytime soon. And so that relief at this point is becoming more and more illusory. But down below here, look, references to false flag operation, kill Donald Trump, multiple references to Saturn and the serpent, which we're going to be discussing in connection with the with the Death Tarot card. Again, the 13th tarot card in Trump Shutdown is 13 letters, but we'll get there. But you also have this phrase, hidden in plain sight. And so I thought to myself, I need to look harder at this. And so the phrase border security gives us the initials BS, as in bullshit, but also is in the 2nd and 19th letters, giving us the number 219. And so, of course, if we drop the 0 out of the current year, that is the number that we are left with. And, of course, all of the fascinating things. But let's go back. When we look at the simple value here for 219, we have the phrase, let's make America great again, as well as Trump assassinated, and 33 degrees. Again, all of this revolving around this 33rd edition here and all the other connections to that number that I brought you. But I want you to also see here the references to not only stock market collapse and United States dollar, but U.S. Constitution. Because that is something that is going to be at the centerpiece of this tarot card that we're going to look at. But I also want you to see that it is something that it is written about Trump has no problem going to destroy. Again, the foundation of the nation in many ways in the context that is presented to us. But so hold on to all of that. And now let's look at a couple of things. So 2/19 as a date becomes February 19th. Now, that just so happens to be another full moon, the full snow moon. And with that coding, you have references to POTUS Trump, as well as All Mocking Tongue, the Keystone State, which is the 33rd largest by area size. It's also the location of Whitman chocolate. I still want to look into that further. But notice as well, One United World, 911, and Jews did 9/11. Now, why I want to highlight this bit is because I did find it really interesting that on January 18th, again 11 times 8 for that 88, NBC had this really, what I would feel to be controversial clip that they played. So check this out.
The satanic Jews, they control everything and mostly everybody.
In this Instagram post, Mallory calling Farrakhan the greatest of all time.
All right, so I'm not in any way saying he's wrong. I'm just saying it's really interesting that NBC chooses to play that sort of clip to its audience of millions. And then this reference of a goat, again, we were just talking about the Sabbath of the goat in the previous video, but I'm going to redirect you there because I really want to keep moving here. And in bringing this around, we look to the speech that Trump gave on January 19th, yesterday. Okay, so of course it is that inverted 911, as we just saw coding for there. But it also showed us that he in no way acknowledges the struggle of the people out of work right now, of the potential looming massive irreversible effects this could have on the nation. But it also showed him giving this speech in front of the Athenaeum, this picture of George Washington behind him. And my job out hit the floor because, yes, that does have the same coding as Trump and false flags and the New Age, all of it, Whitman. But it's also a major piece of Pez theory. And hold on to that. But so what we have here, as I stated earlier, from Trump Shutdown, not only the 2019 reference, but also the 13 letters of the death card. So when we start to interpret that card, I'll bring you over here. And again, this is from Eli Tarot. And the reason I want to bring you to this bit is so you can see here its esoteric title is The Lord of the Gate of Death. And I'll scroll through this here so you can get a real nice look at this card. Okay. All of this information, as always, I will leave you this so that you can continue to delve into this. But look at the coding here. You have reference to the Pale Horse Rider, Forces of Darkness, Blood Moon tonight, which is why it's so important that I get this video out tonight. And the number 108 written out. Why is that so important? Well, so check this out. He postponed the speech from 3 to 4. I'm on the West Coast, so obviously 3 hours behind. So when he comes on at 4, he's still delayed. And look at what time it is when he comes out. It's See if I can play this.
Just a short time ago, I had the honor of...
It's 108. And as I showed you in the first video in my Economist series, that number is in huge reverence for the moon. Okay, you can see on the right side of your screen all of those connections that I've reiterated and how it directly ties in with this discussion. But so that to me is fascinating. But you also see here again, terror attack, a perfect storm. Again, he always talked about the storm is coming, TS again, 2019. And this idea, death of a king coming soon, and the king of the idiots. Now down below here, it takes you one further, and it gives you Donald Trump / idiot and the last president. Now, of course, he clearly hails himself to be of emperor status, but we have this as well from The Economist, in which he is on the emperor card, in other words, the king. Right, and there his 2 feet hang over the U.S., that nice 11, ever present. But looking through this further, for Lord of the Gate of Death, you also see it has the same coding as Juliet Hollister, who founded the Temple of Understanding, which is located at 777 United Nations Plaza. Okay? All of these huge things that we've talked about, okay? References to one world religion, Washington State, which will come up again later as it is the 42nd state. So down below here you see I've got written out for you a number of bits connecting the number 777 to order out of chaos, the Aquarius age, the ideas of Saturn, and this really interesting bit about segment from the War in Heaven from Revelations. And again, all of that is very fascinating and does give us references to ideas such as the Aquarius age, President Pence, the Illuminati, and the spider's web. You'll notice here for the War in Heaven, just to point it out, that 153, the full snow moon that we discussed that will be happening on February 19th takes place at 10:53 a.m. So dropping that 0 gives us another 153. So that's a very important number. Hold on to it. It'll keep coming up today. But now let's really get into this. So Saturn is an anagram for sun art. Now, when I look at this, and we read from Crowley's Book of Thoth here, there's just some fascinating connections. And the one that I want to make in connection to the shutdown is this idea of it being connected with Scorpio and the symbolism of the scorpion, supposed by early observers of nature to commit suicide when finding itself ringed with fire or otherwise in a desperate situation. This represents putrefaction in its lowest form. The strain of environment has become intolerable, and the attacked element willingly subjects itself to change. All right, and that's exactly what I was talking about in the beginning with the slow burn that has been initiated with this shutdown and the damage, the crippling damage it does to those affected, and the likeliness of them lowering their expectations severely increases, no matter how little they're offered, if it's better than the inevitable death they are soon to face. So you can look through here, and there's really fascinating connections to the serpent, to the phoenix, again at the top of the card here, above the crown. But I want you to see here the reference to the card representing the dance of death. And when we think about that, and again, all of these connections to pangolin, that is the Jewish coding for it, does come up with dance of death. Okay, and again, that pangolin video is phenomenal. But I want you to see here, it says both the skeleton and the scythe are important symbols of Saturn. And you can read further here, but what I really want to draw your attention to is this Latin phrase, Redeunt Saturnia Regna. And I want to pull that apart for you because it translates as the kingdom of Saturn returns. And when we're thinking in the connection to the 2019 cover with Saturn, there's an excellent comment pointing out his hat on Walt Whitman over here. Very clearly looks like a hail to Saturn, and also him being the architect from The Matrix. Again, this idea of time, the constructor of the universe. And so all of these fascinating hails, and even if we pull it back here and we look at the time from the shutdown beginning to that full snow moon, you'll notice here that we get these references to 864 and 144. And for those of you who remember the Whitman video, you do remember I pulled those numbers out of a span of time for him as well, between how long the New York Times reported his death. But again, you can see that coding on the right side of your screen now. Its connection to Mark of the Beast, the Crescent Moon, Scarlet Woman, New Age religions, so on. So all very fascinating. But again, getting back now. So in thinking about that phrase and its connection to Saturn, you see here NASA with its Cassini mission reporting on the kingdom of Saturn. They, of course, managed to get in a nice 88 with that August 8th reference there. But what I really want to point out in connection to this Saturn bit is the fact that, and this is from the Library of Congress, and you can see these prints from the Centennial, again, published in 1788, about the federal pillars. Now, these are the states that were ratifying the U.S. Constitution. They were running this article that would show more pillars being built. But I want to tune you into this one, because on June 11th of 1788, and again, that glaring 88, they introduced the phrase Redeunt Saturnia Regna. Now, why on earth, when we're talking about the U.S. Constitution being ratified, do they find it appropriate to reference the return of the kingdom of Saturn? How bizarre, right? This hand over here saying it will rife. When we go over here and we look at the coding for it, it's really troubling. What we see, not only further references to that 88 and the birth of the age of Aquarius, but also information to reiterate all of that coding for Trump assassination we saw in the beginning of this video. You see we are 138 written out. Again, that taken from a song that is on the opposite side of the Misfits track, Bullet, featuring this very controversial cover art. And again, Trump having this in the back of his head. And all of that being compounded with the presence of 138 being the same coding as Donald Trump. Now, this ties in even more though. Okay, beyond all of these connections to HAARP being a Saturn antenna, the Saturn moon matrix, but you also see these ideas of cosmic key 153, the number I told you to hold on to earlier, as well as cosmic key 135. So remember, that is the coding for Rod Williams from the film Get Out. And again, all of the connections to the Thelemic Order, God of Baphomet, terrorism, and the stock exchange. But it's also a connection to the 42nd chapter of Book of Lies, Dust Devils, which you can see written out there. And again, we've had some 42s, and I'll reiterate them at the end. And when we're looking at the phrase, it will rife, it is an anagram for it will fire. But the coding for that all the same references to conspiracy, 88, death to America. Now, that coding is very unique as well because 123 as a date is January 23rd. And as I discussed in my previous video, that will be the 33rd day of the shutdown. Of course, you can see there, mirroring and adding, it gives us the ever important 444. But what I really want to mention here, especially in connection with the last set of coding that came up there with Donald Trump in that 138, is that article coming out on June 11th. And why that's such a big deal to me. So, back in 2016, I had a video that talked about the significance of June 11th. And that video was very quickly banned worldwide under the alleged claim of audio-visual content being used that was not permitted. And I used no such content in the video. And so I went on a few days later to present the Pez theory, which I always am coming back to. But part of the keystone piece of that was discussing the importance of June 11th and that video being banned. But when we look at the coding for the federal pillars, again, what those images are, right, what this is all about, it shares the coding for the Pez theory, just like 138 does. And you can see furthermore in the ideas of synchronicity at play tonight, it's talking about the Death Tarot card. You also have a reference to Handsome Dan, 18, which I will reiterate is this happy fellow from Yale, Skull and Bones. Of course, his nice 33 and one eye symbolism. This is a more classic logo of theirs. Again, those two Y's reducing to 77, as in book 77, which we have seen come up time and again throughout this coding. But again, looking through all of that, its connections to rings of Satan, sigil of Lucifer, the blood and the grail, all of these massive pieces, dictatorship, on and on. But so now if you keep following on the left side of your screen here, you can see that in 1788, of course, 8 states ratified the U.S. Constitution. if we were to add all of those, right, numbers together, 4 through 11, we do get the number 60. Again, you can see the immense importance of that number. And again, that did come up as the number of days in this span of time, the government shutdown, and the full snow moon. So more to think about. But I want you to take into consideration here is that the captions for these controversial woodcuts, right? Eighth pillar. And then the next one presented in their collection here. That's not the one I clicked on. Maybe it was. Okay. Is the federal edifice. So those two phrases happen to have the same coding. That also shares coding with Deathbed Edition, which was the 33rd edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. And you also have false flag attack. The number is 185 written out again on the right side of your screen. You can see that coding shared with Donald John Trump. Again, a 15-letter name. So we're talking about all this Saturn connection. But notice as well, Judgment the Star, Zion's Coming King. All important to mention here, but Judgment and the Star are the two cards tilted in this 8-deck spread. Again, a lot of research done on that. But so, on and on with all of it, okay? But when we look back here, because this is just so fascinating to me, right? In all of this talk of the number 11, of course, the chief number of magic, the number of points on the Qliphoth, that number that drives chaos, destruction, putrefaction, right? All fueled. But they keep coming back to it, right? It is the lust card. The Statue of Liberty, I believe, sits on an 11-pointed star as well. And so you see here, they end it by saying, justice and law shall endless peace maintain, and the Saturnian age return again. So what? The U.S. Constitution and the age of Saturn? Saturn returning? How very fascinating. And even if you think about the enthroned Washington Monument that we've discussed so much in the past, this all fits in perfectly. But so take a look there at the coding for Saturnian age, and you'll see here 10 Phoenix. And that does bring us back here in that idea of this world currency. You have golden-haired man, 11 planes. Again, all of that talk of 11. This idea of the white horse, the seventh seal. Pythagoreans come up in here, the black skeleton, the dollar, the moon, and this. It's a big piece here. It's a really, really monumental piece. But so now again here, just finishing out, you can see that Saturn returns. Another way to look at that coding of what we see on the cover here, Redeunt Saturnia Regna, references to the number 153, as well as Planet Trump ritual. And again, as we've discussed, Planet Trump being very clearly written on that cover. And if I were to pull up that coding for you to see, you can see all the ways in which we've broken that down and looked at it for you. But again, this reference here to 33 written out, as above, so below, on and on, right? We've really done a lot here, and I'll try to skip it through so you can see all that. But so, in rounding the bend here, and again, all these themes of human extinction agenda, the Antichrist, right? All that connection that we looked at earlier with that, the war on heaven coding, in heaven, excuse me. But what I want you to see in looking at this Kingdom of Saturn coding, and this is one of the last points here that I'm going to go on, you have the numbers 1, 4, and 6 written out. And as I keep telling you, you should be familiar with those numbers at this point, as it is my number. It is the number for Liber 77, the Economist, the Apocalypse, the blood of a goat, right? As came up earlier in that NBC clip that I showed you, Leonardo da Vinci, all these pieces tied into this current line of research that I've been doing. I also showed you in that pangolin video that in issue 146 of Mad Magazine, you had this on the back. And again, you should watch that video for the full breakdown of it, because it is really, really fascinating. But so looking at this further though, in Kingdom of Saturn, references to world depopulation, Aquarius, Apocalypse, and Revelation 13, which is the beast out of the sea. Which brings us back to the beginning when we were looking at the phrase border security. And so again, how thinking Trump could earn himself a wound, quote unquote, in this event that would be healed. You definitely have those pieces. But look here as well, Aquarius trumpet, again, Trump and it, initiates of Saturn, the coming catastrophe, and Kinsey Institute. Now, I want to bring that up because he is a major player in the role that sex has come to play in this world. So Alfred Kinsey, with the help of the Rockefeller Foundation, founded the Kinsey Institute in 1947. And as I've discussed in the past, 1947 was an incredibly major year. It's the year that a bowling alley was first put into the White House by the 33rd president. And again, you must watch my Big Lebowski video to really get the importance of that, its connection to the Pythagoreans. But anyways, 1947, also the year that the CIA was established, National Security Council, Department of Defense, and the signing of the National Security Act. Again, all those events are actually on the same day, which I've also got a whole video about. But so, with Kinsey then using Rockefeller money, it is no surprise that he is completely a part of this New World agenda. And so I'll leave you this article here, but you can see that over time, the Playboy Foundation, George Soros, and continually the Rockefellers continued to fund this institution, which is deemed by this researcher to normalize the idea of anything goes sex and normalize pedophilia or adult child sex. Now, again, these are not light issues, but this does tie in directly with the pangolin research, in which how faked mammal on the planet humans are, and in particular children. And again, I cannot encourage you to read that or watch that video enough. But again, you can see all of these connections here to pedophilia. Again, how this all then ties into all the other bits of programming. But another big red flag is when they're exposing it, quote unquote, they say it took 33 years until the first person noted Kinsey's crimes. And so, I mean, as always, please come through and read this, because the impact that it shows of him having on America is fascinating. And it's really in direct alignment with Crowley's notion of ushering in a new world by first completely overturning sexual norms and using that energy, that fear, that aggression, that all of it, that will, and overturning society. And again, this connects into my entire video I did discussing that at length, that I don't want to belabor the point here on. But one last piece here is that in looking at the coding for Death 13, the way it appears on the card, you have a reference to the cosmic dance. End times, of course, a reference to phallus, as this all pertains. And then you also see here Da Vinci Code. And with this cover being inspired by Da Vinci and all the things that we've discussed with it, you really can't help but think about how it all connects to that damn movie too, right? So in looking at the premiere date of that movie, May 17th, 2006, and then connecting it to our 2/19 date, because that to me was the most important one in this video, you see there it is a perfect span of 666 weeks. And I found that to be pretty astounding. Again, that same day as that full snow moon, the connections to 153 in that, and again, all of these 219 connections. But so in finishing out here, you can see when you look into the book of the Da Vinci Code, it just says published in April of 2003. And so again, in just doing a little bit of connections there, you see our references to the numbers 88 and 188, all of the ways that we can break that down. But so I guess the last little bit here that I was going to talk about was in Get Out, since we see so much of that coding throughout this, especially if you've watched the previous videos. But a T set is what is used to induce the hypnosis. And I thought that was really interesting when I found out that the band Pink Floyd was originally called the T set, or T sets, something like that. And in thinking about this catalyst for this shutdown, excuse me a moment. Something caught in my throat there. Apparently not supposed to finish that thought. But Pink Floyd's The Wall came out on November 30th of 1979. And of course, as we discussed earlier, November 30th connected to that Economist cover and the death of George Bush Sr. So I think that's very interesting. I don't know what's happened to my voice. It's possible that I've said too much. But one last thing here with the Pez theory. Looking at those 44 bricks is what made me first see the importance here, and this idea of they come from their heads on sticks. And when you pull the head back, you get a treat. When you remove the head, you're given a treat. And I think that has a lot to do with how we are conditioned. But so thank you to everybody for taking the time to watch this video. As always, it is greatly, greatly appreciated. I'm getting my wind back a little bit here. But as always, please be well.